you come to a much more text-based index now than before. We have a lot less scores and numbers. And that creates problems of its own. And at the end, as a cliffhanger, I'm going to come to the headaches that we're having, because I mean, this is we're amongst ourselves, and this is about learning. And so I will raise a couple of questions which I'm not happy with um, about our own work. But let's start with the good thing. The good thing is we can communicate with the BTI, with the Transformation Index, about comprehensive social developments, because we are not just looking at democracy. That's the first difference. But we are looking at processes of change. And so therefore we have a political component, we have an economic and social component, and we are pretty unique in that regard. We also have a study of governance. And that, of course, we could not do. This is why we are looking at developing countries and countries we consider to be in transition, or hopefully someday in transition, and not at full-fledged democracies on an economically advanced level. We can only do things like governance analysis because we are working with privileged to work with a network of more than 300 experts in more than 120 countries worldwide. And they are providing text analysis for us. So the conversations that we are having are primarily concerned with the results of our text analysis, about the narrative that we are creating. They are perhaps a little bit less about the scores. The scores are supposed to be an eye-opener, and they are important. And the categorizations we are deriving are also important. But we find that, for example, when talking with development ministries, or when talking with political decision makers or reformists in countries, they appreciate to have, the text analysis on the table that is contextualizing our data. So perhaps this is the big differences, and that, of course, necessitates that we are drilling down very quickly, because I also only have 10 minutes, of course. And so let's drill down very quickly. 137 countries. Our goal is to identify good strategies of social change, of change management in developing and transition countries. We have a comprehensive set of aspects that we would like to see studied by our experts. And of course, for the time being and for this discussion today here, we can disregard the economic transformation. Only suffice it to say that the very broad concept of democracy, which also includes an egalitarian side, of course, would have some indicators in there that would be of high use then. And we can also bracket out good governance, which is a pity in a way, because we could talk a lot about the pretty strong correlation between democracy erosion on the one hand and worse governance on the other hand, and the specific points of governance that get worse once democracy quality erodes. But for the purpose of today, we just focus on political transformation with the normative goal, democracy based on the rule of law. I would very much like to salute and pay reference to the embedded democracy concept developed by Wolfgang Merkel and colleagues. We did not, he does not have the responsibility for the BTI adaptation. We adopted it and did not take it over completely. But of course, you are familiar with the concept, and you know that once one partial regime is not functioning in this concept of embedded democracy, then the whole democracy is suffering up to a point of becoming autocratic. So this leads us to focus on political regime quality, of course, where you have, you see here, you have the electoral regime and the political liberties and the effective power to govern in our political participation criterion. And then you have the civil rights and the horizontal accountability in the rule of law criterion. But we also have integrated the preconditions for democratization, meaning a sufficient level of stateless to become a democracy in the first place, think of Afghanistan 15 years ago or Central African Republic during the last decade. Outside of the capital, there was no effective monopoly on the use of force, and therefore no chance to democratize, even though institutions were existing. And then on the other hand, we have, and that is important for developing countries especially, we have democratic consolidation criteria. And we look at the stability of democratic institutions on the one hand, and about the representativeness of a political system and the support it gains. But for today, let's just focus on the political core criteria. We use these. Most of these indicators to differentiate as a first step between democracies and autocracies by these benchmark indicator scores. We have a minimum score attached to each of these 6 indicators. And we add stateness, because if stateness is so insistent that a political regime establishment is not possible, then of course that also disqualifies a country from becoming a democracy. And only as a second step do we then use the full-fledged political transformation overall score, and to differentiate between consolidating democracies, defective democracies, highly defective democracies on the one hand, and moderate or hardline autocracies on the other hand. That might lead at times to the counterintuitive result that Singapore, for example, has a slightly higher political transformation score than the Philippines, Lebanon, and Malaysia, is nonetheless classified as an autocracy, whereas the other ones are highly defective democracies. Our assessment process, because when you have an expert-based assessment and you rely so much on text analysis, then of course the window is wide open for the danger of subjectivity. So you need to have a finely granulated review process. We have a standardized code book. We assign one author the duty, pleasure, honor, whatever, to write a country report and to assign scores. And then we have a reviewer who comments on the report and assigns scores independently. If one of the author is from the respective country, then the other one should be international, or vice versa. We don't really care as long as we have 2 different perspectives. This is not working in North Korea, not in Turkmenistan, but it is working in the in most of the countries that we are looking at. In over 120 countries, it is working. Then we have a regional coordinator, who is the moderator between the country expert and the reviewer, or the report author and the reviewer, and is assigning scores again independently by doing an intra-regional calibration, checking if the text quality and the scoring level is corresponding. If the differentiation inside the region is adequately reflected also in the scores. And of course, he's doing, or she is doing, a lot of text work also, because we are checking if it is a comprehensive assessment, or if there are important facts missing that make a comparability not possible. Then when we get the sign, well, all the country reports are ready and all the scores are assigned, then it is our task to do an inter-regional pre-calibration, because that has not happened. The regional coordinator has only looked inside his or her region. And we are going through indicator by indicator, scoring level by scoring level, in the search for outliers. This is a text immanent check of the scores in inter-regional comparison, which we then bring to a calibration conference, discuss potential outliers there, and then finally submit it to the BTI advisory board, of which Wolfgang Merkel is also a member, which we are very happy about. So now to the headaches, the promised headaches. Timeliness is an issue. This process that I've just shown you, this takes us over a year. We need 6 to 7 months to validate the scores. And then we need another 5 months minimum to assure the quality of the country reports. So this is not, we are not a news agency. We report about transformation processes, but timeliness is an issue. Our reports are 1 year old before we even get to publish them. We have the multidimensionality of indicators is a problem. We are not as finely granulated as what Wolfgang and Michael, if I may, presented. And I'm very, very jealous because this is fantastically finely granulated. We have to deal with questions. We are asking 52 questions. And we have to deal with the fact that we have to balance out for example, if we're taking democracy, the freedom and the equality and the control factors, and have to decide for each indicator which one to assign how much weight. We are doing that not mathematically, but we are doing that in advising our country experts and our regional coordinators what to weigh how much. Nonetheless, this is a problem. Subjectivity, I already described, and as my time is running out, I'm not going into further detail. I think that, Michael Koppert said it earlier, what is an objective indicator? So there is a degree of subjectivity in composition, in scoring level, and so on. Anyhow, nonetheless, with an expert-based assessment, the danger is higher. And so we try to filter out as good as we possibly can. It's not going to work 100%, but in the end of the day, if you're having doubts, you can still look up the respective chapter in the country report to make sure that you got the right information or that you can discuss the information. Coverage of countries, 137 countries, not 200. It's a pity. 20 years ago, the call for looking only at countries in the process of transformation was much more obvious than it is today. So today you could either ask the question, where is the transformation line? Are EU member states not perhaps beyond the status of being a transformation country? Well, then we look at Hungary and Poland and we think, well, maybe they're not. But then if we turn the table, should we look at the US or at Britain or my own country, also in more search for democratic effects? Yeah, we should. We have a sister project, the Sustainable Governance Indicators, that does just that. Nonetheless, it is very, very difficult to justify the division or the non-inclusion of countries or the broad inclusion of countries from Somalia ranging to Slovenia. And then finally, the timelines. I wish I had, the boldness to go back to 1789 or 1848 or 1918 or 1989. We are text-based and we do not go back in our text-based assessment over time. You can discuss that definitely in the competition of data. This is a huge big disadvantage. I'm aware of that. So that are some of the weak points that I also wanted to mention because we want to have a critical discussion later on. I do thank you for your kind attention.